it's somebody aping the style of another movie. It's not an original thing. So it's satisfying enough. It's satisfying enough, but it's not it doesn't go to that next level of being, a great one-of-a-kind exploitation film, if that makes sense.
If I could just ask a quick follow-up question. I know you do events at the Yonkers Alamo Drafthouse. Do you do writing or movie reviews in New York? Because I know you're based out of the Dallas area and also...
No, I'm mostly based out of the New York area.
Okay.
So I go to the Alamo, and I've been doing presentations at Alamo Drafthouses since Alamo's Drafthouse started on Lamar Street in Austin. Even before they had the 6th Street Theater. So, but I do them at the Brooklyn Alamo and Yonkers Alamo and Kansas City Alamo and the Omaha Alamo. I've been to quite a few Alamo Drafthouses. Yeah.
Thank you. Good question.
Hi. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you for doing this. This is a pretty amazing experience for me personally. So, thank you.
Well, thank you.
My question: you're the only critic that I think I've ever heard talk about Hellraiser at the same time as talking about like Aristotle's Poetics, which I find fascinating. And I was just I have a 2-part question. And it was just like, is there an element in the films that you love that you feel like is a common thread that is needed for to make a movie great? And is that one of the reasons why it's missing? I think you may have answered part of that question with his questions, that people are trying to remake old 80s films. And then secondly, because there are some good films like Deathgasm and Hell House LLC, which are pretty scary films and stuff like that, do you think that you would ever consider doing hosting a Joe Bob's Brig marathon with maybe the new generation of these films that are out?
Yeah, I would actually prefer to do that. I'm more interested in the stuff that's recent, but the producer of the show, the director of the show, the executives at Shudder, they prefer to mine this old 80s stuff, and the fans of Shudder actually like the old 80s stuff, And so, I lived through the 80s. I didn't think the 80s was, there's a lot of crap in the 80s, So I'm not sure. The weirdest thing to me now is that there'll be these Arrow video releases, of 80s films, and they'll say, big movie in the 80s, well, I'm sorry, I saw every movie in the 80s, and that movie didn't come out in the 80s. You know what I mean? And so it's some movie that was on the shelf or couldn't get distribution, or it was distributed in one city or one state or something, and it's a forgotten gem. They never say it's a crap movie that couldn't get distribution in 1987. They say it's a forgotten gem, And so almost anything made in the 80s, even stuff that couldn't be distributed, is sort of worshipped by the current generation of horror fans, And one reason for that is horror fans are unlike any other genre in that they want to see everything. They want to see everything from 1920 to the present, every movie. There's no other genre like that. Nobody wants to see every comedy. Nobody ever wants to see every action film. It's only horror. So I guess the answer to your question is yes. Especially the foreign films, especially these weird Japanese films that. We know some of the more prominent guys from overseas, like Takashi Miike and those. But even Takashi Miike, you ask him, where do you get these ideas for your films? And he goes, American horror films. I grew up on American horror films. Did you watch them in reverse while you were taking LSD? Because we didn't have any of that stuff in America. And that's what they all say in New Zealand, Australia, wherever you go. American horror films. I watched American horror films when I was growing up, and there's weird stuff, Korean films, So I would like to review some of those. I'd like to host some of those. Because we're kind of in a transition period where it either has to be a big budget remake like It, or a micro budget film that we never see unless we go to a film festival, you know. And some of those micro budget films are really good, but the deals that the guys can get on Netflix are, you know, we'll let you be on there for 3 months, and if you get enough people watching it, we'll give you another 3-month contract, and so nobody, there's too much white noise on the internet, and they can't get the word out as to which films are good. I go to these film festivals where people make films for $5,000, $9,000, whatever. Some of which are, I mean, a whole lot of it's crap, but some of them are you know, good enough that they would amuse you, they would entertain you. You would not feel it was wasted time. Okay, maybe they wouldn't be 4-star films. You know, maybe they wouldn't have the special effects of The Shape of Water. But so the exploitation, that exploitation world is still there. It's just that it's overwhelmed by the noise of the social media world. You just can't get noticed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Briggs. I was wondering if you could tell us what it was like working with Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese on Casino.
Intimidating. I was between jobs. I didn't have a job, and so I was auditioning, and they called me and said, "You want to?" The casting director called and said, "We think you'd be right for this part of the idiot slots manager in Casino." And I said, "Okay." And so. And it's a Scorsese movie. Well, that scared me right away, you know. So I'm like asking my friends to help me, you know, read the lines. And then she calls back and she says, "You know what? I think you know, Marty is going to be in the office. I think I'll just have you read for Marty instead of reading for me." I said, Marty, yeah, Martin Scorsese. Oh, okay. So now I'm really scared, and so I started working on the part, you know. And then she calls back later and she says, "We're going to have you read with Bobby for Marty." You know, and so it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. And so I go to the casting office, and there's all these guys with the mafia faces from all the Scorsese movies. They're all sitting in the waiting room, you know, and they're all complaining about their parking validation. You know, "We drove in from Jersey. Tell Marty he needs to validate us." You know? And so they take me in, and the only thing that saved me is De Niro was late for the reading, and he didn't know his lines, and so he had to put on his glasses and lean over and look at the page, and so I kind of felt like, oh good, I won't have to look into his eyes while I'm doing this. And so I had by that time I had 9 different ways to do it, and I said, "Mr. Scorsese, let me do it a different way. Can I do it this way? Can I do it this way? Can I do it this way?" He says, "Yeah, that's fine. You know, I like the first one. That's fine. That's fine." And then, so, you know, I thought, well, it was a good experience. And then when I got the part, it was like, you know, a couple of weeks at the Riviera Hotel the old Riviera Hotel in Las Vegas. And you know, of course, all the other people in the film, they knew Martin Scorsese, and they knew they'd all worked together in the past and everything. And I was just, the thing that made me feel comfortable is Scorsese came up to me and said, he says, "So, what's the best women in prison movie?" And I said, "Well, I think it's Caged Heat, but a lot of people would disagree." And he says, "I think you're right. I think it is Caged Heat, because Scorsese doesn't only know every Russian movie. He knows every women in prison movie." And then he said, "But would you agree with me that the woman in prison genre is a separate genre from the prison movie and not a subgenre of the prison movie?" "I would agree with you, Mr. Scorsese." And then I got to talk to Scorsese a lot, because when they're setting up on these big movies, it takes forever to set the lighting and everything, and he has nothing to do. because he has all these people that work for him for years, and they know what to do, and they don't even listen to him. They're just like doing their jobs, and he's waiting, you know, for them to get set up for the shot. So he has nothing to do. He's a nervous guy, and he walks around, and so I would ask him about movies, and you know, we would talk about exploitation films, and I asked him about The Honeymoon Killers, because that was going to be his first movie, but he was fired after 2 weeks. And I said, what did you think of The Honeymoon Killers? And he said, well, I never watched it. I said, really? So you never saw the finished product? And he said, no, too painful. He says, I thought it was never going to work again. And I said, wow, I didn't know it affected you that much. And he said, yeah. He says, you know, it's 3 years before I got another film. He got that Roger Corman film. I think it was Boxcar Bertha or something. He filmed it in Arkansas, and he said, I was so afraid of getting fired again that, you know, I had storyboards ready every day for when Roger Corman came to the set, and because I thought, you know, I'm going to get fired again. And I said, well, I guess the guy was sorry later, and he said, no, he should have fired me. No, he should have fired me. And I said, why? And he says, because I was doing the same thing I do today. I was doing no coverage. I was just doing long tracking shot scenes with no coverage, you know. So it was just one long shot, and they kept telling me don't do that. And after a week or so, they were saying, we can't have this. You know, we can't have this footage that can't be recut. And so he said, no, they had to fire me. They had to fire me. So I thought that was an interesting story about the beginning of his career, because he almost blew it. You know, he almost ruined it. No, it was a great experience, and you know, being around those guys. It was actually the easiest job that I ever had, because they were not, you know, what you do is you go in the trailer, or you go in the room with people in the scene. And Scorsese loves people to talk over each other, just step on the other guy's dialogue, you know, so it's fast, rapid fire. And so you go in the other room and you just do the scene over and over and over again, and you step on each other's lines until he says, right there, stop. That's it, that version right there. And then you go do the scene. And he also doesn't mind if you change the words. You know, he likes the spontaneity of that. So that was fun. You know, you don't find many directors that work like that.
Very
Thanks
cool.
a lot.
Thanks, Chris. I'm sorry, we only have time for one more question. Eddie, please.
Give him luck.
Woo, lucky.
Way too long.
Hey there. So you mentioned something earlier that you mentioned the Mission Drive-In earlier today, which is a little near and dear to me. That was one of my first jobs there. You know, starting with my short stint career with film. There, little stint with the Alamo Drafthouse actually as a projectionist. So 2 questions here. Do you have any stories about that location in particular?
Well, not specifically, because I was always in Dallas, but I kept track of all the drive-ins in Texas, and if I recall, it had 4 screens, right?
Correct.
Yeah, but for years it was the place to go in San Antonio, right?
The only place actually for quite some time.
So
for miles.
It was a famous drive-in. So when I read, you know, that's like everything's gone except the screen, and you bring lawn chairs.
Right.
I was like, you know, they do that shit in France. You don't do that. It's called a drive-in. It's called a drive-in. You know, that's not a drive-in. You know, so the Mission. You know, I thought, oh, the mighty Mission has fallen.
Yeah, it was a great place. And one other thing, what are your thoughts, if any, on theaters and their transition from film to digital projection? Do you have a preference at all?
I prefer film, but that's a losing battle. I mean, you know, nobody's ever going back to film. I mean,
Unfortunately.
film is the only artistic medium that, with every successive generation, the technology that creates the actual image of the film gets worse. Yeah. You know, it peaked in the 1930s. You know, when they had that silver acetate Technicolor beautiful film stock, which you can sometimes see, you know, because they preserved it for certain movies, for, you know, for The Wizard of Oz and for, you know, Gone with the Wind. There's a few movies where they've preserved it, and at certain theaters you can see it, although now it's not cool to show Gone with the Wind anymore, so a lot of theaters have stopped showing that, you know, but most people alive today have never seen a perfect Technicolor film image, and actually Eastman Kodak doesn't process them anymore.
Yeah, it's
So
one of the reasons
if you were to make a film, I don't know where you would process it. You'd probably somewhere in China or somewhere in India, you could probably find somebody who is still processing, 35 millimeter or 70 millimeter film. But if you could find the film, you'd also have to find the film lab. And so I think that world is gone.
Yeah, luckily I got to spend a couple of years as a projectionist along with this guy right here. So yeah. One last thing, good choice on your middle girl.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah, I see her right there.
She's here. She's going to be in the lobby. She's.
You got good taste.
She's. Yeah, she's going to be helping with the signing. Oh, here she is.
Well, again, thank you very much for your great questions. And one more time, give it up for Joe Bob Briggs.